Coastal storm has been sitting off the Delaware coast all day long, and there's actually wound up with some not too shabby rainfall amounts across eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England. Coastal flooding continues and will probably continue for another day or two because you've got to get this all out of the way. But we'll help it along tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. Support the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. You can do so by shopping our referral link on Amazon. The link is on the descriptor to this podcast. All you got to do is use the link to get you to Amazon. You do your regular shopping. Amazon throws us back a little bit of coin for sending you there. And in the process, it keeps the live Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast commercial free. So we do appreciate those of you who have taken the time to use the referral link on Amazon. Tempest by Weatherflow, folks. If you need a weather station, Tempest is it. It's easy to install, runs off your mobile device, and they now even have monitors that you can get. If you want to put up a monitor on your wall, you can get one through Tempest. It's the revolutionary Tempest weather system. It's the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. The link is also on the descriptor to this podcast. And we suggest that you use the coupon code, Joe Rayo.
Well, that coupon code, Joe Chiaffi, is Autumn 2025. And if you use it, well, look at this. You can get as much as 10% off anything that you purchase through the Tempest website. Wow.
Yeah. So this long duration mess is going to be winding down, but I was looking at, the rainfall last night into this morning was fairly substantial. A lot of places on Long Island got 2 to 3 inches. You did well by you from what you were telling me before we went on the air tonight. And
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I mean, I wanted to, compare to other places in Putnam County. But most of the places that have been reported from Putnam County near to me, 7 a.m., 7 a.m., 8 a.m., Cold Spring, which is just a stone's throw away to my north, 7:44 a.m., they had 2.04 inches. I ended up adding on to yesterday, Joe, I had over 3 inches of rain. So I don't know whether or not Renata sometimes says that the leaves that are above the rain gauge on the weather station that we have, is blocking the rainfall from getting into the cup. And that's why sometimes we end up with less than a lot of other places. But this time around, we outdid everybody, at least in Putnam County, 2.04 inches in Cold Spring. But like I said, that was at 7:44 this morning. I'm sure they must have had a lot more than that. And again, we had over 3 inches when you take into account the rain, which started finally late yesterday and last evening. So a pretty darn good amount, a pretty hefty amount for us. The biggest rainfall I think we've had in quite a number of months.
Yeah, I also noticed that particularly in South Jersey, the coastal flooding was considerable. In fact, I have something here. Let me just bring it up on the screen. Scott Briller, the chairman, sent this to me because he's a big Wildwood, New Jersey fan, and here you have it. This is Wildwood, New Jersey, Cape County. Pretty impressive.
Quite an amazing image there, or images, as it was a video. Incredible.
Yes. And I noticed on the South Shore of Long Island, too, in some of the usual suspect places like Lindenhurst, Freeport, Babylon, got their fair share of tidal flooding. The high tides this afternoon were among the highest. The next high tide comes during the early morning hours, and that'll probably be high, too, but it might be a shade lower than this one. But nonetheless, we'll still have to deal with coastal flooding issues that are going to go on for another day or two until this thing gets out of the way. The other thing that stood out to me also was if we look at I'm going to bring up the satellite loop because you don't see this too often in the eastern part of the United States, where you can actually see two spinning lows on the visible satellite. The standout one, well, they're both kind of stand out. The one that's off the North Carolina coastline, and that's just kind of inching its way southeastward. And then if you look off the Delaware coast and off the coast of southern New Jersey, there's a ring of clouds there that's rotating around in a counterclockwise fashion. That's the secondary low. That thing has not moved since early this morning. It's been sitting there all day.
Right, and both systems will finally move to the east out over the open waters of the Atlantic later tonight and tomorrow. And as that happens, we'll begin to see slow, and I want to underscore the word slow improvement. We'll probably have areas of fog, mist, and drizzle for much of tonight. And then for tomorrow, just we'll have to wait out the cloud cover. I think in the afternoon, we'll begin to see some breaks or pokes in the clouds and a bit of sunshine showing up. And then finally, we'll get into a partly cloudy to clear sky tomorrow night. And then Wednesday, Joe, we've got another front. You could see that, in fact, on your satellite view there, cutting across the plain states just to the northwest of Michigan and the Great Lakes area. And that front will move on through probably early in the day on Wednesday. So Wednesday may start with some cloud cover, and then very quickly in the afternoon, as the winds pick up, we'll see the skies clear out, and it will become bright and sunny and beautiful and breezy Wednesday afternoon, and that will usher in the next flow of unseasonably chilly air into our region for Wednesday night, Thursday, and the end of the week on Friday.
Since we got the satellite loop up, I've highlighted the front that you were so kind to point out, and the arrows showing the direction of how everything is moving. Also, want to note the rotation that's off the west coast of California that is pumping in a fair amount of moisture into California, central and northern California. They're having some, rather wet weather certainly for this time of year. And the last remnants of Priscilla running up to the northeast into Kansas and Nebraska, but there's not a whole lot there from the standpoint of precipitation. And you can check it out on the radar. But let's go to the east here. There's still some patches, and I imagine too, just judging from the observations where the radar's not picking up stuff, there's probably some uh, very light rain or drizzle that's around.
Right, mist. I mean, I just took the dog out for a walk about 10 or 15 minutes ago, and it's misty. It's not, and you might not even be call it a mist, but there is very light precipitation still falling, at least in parts of the lower Hudson Valley. And I think the best way to describe this or define this would be to simply say that for the overnight period, just spotty areas of light rain, mist, or drizzle. Do you remember Mr. Drizzle? Well,
Yes, exactly.
he'll be with us overnight tonight. And then tomorrow, basically, it'll be a dry day, but it's going to be a rather cloud-filled day, more clouds than sun. But I do think we're going to start seeing the sun break through as we move through the latter part of the day tomorrow. It'll continue to clear tomorrow night, then it'll cloud over once again, however briefly, with that frontal passage that you just saw on Joe's satellite loop of the GOES 16 image, that will pass on through first thing on Wednesday morning, and then it will brighten behind that front and set the stage for a really nice series of days from later Wednesday through Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and hey, it looks like even Sunday now looks pretty good. I think you were talking, Joe, yesterday about maybe a shower with the next weather front. It looks like that front will not arrive until probably sometime after midnight Sunday night or early on Monday. So we may go virtually a whole week without seeing any precipitation.
In California, mentioning the West, you can see there's heavy rain going on around San Francisco and then up the coast from there. In the Sierra Nevadas, seeing some snow, up to a foot of snow, which for them is not a whole lot, but I guess because it's an early season type of event, and we got winter storm warnings up there. Still seeing some rain and even some flash flood warnings in parts of southeast Arizona. And then they extend over into New Mexico. You could see some heavy downpours there. and into western Colorado. Also, some showers up into Nebraska and also in Kansas. So a bit busy out in the western part of the U.S. That front Joe was talking about coming out of the plains really doesn't have a whole lot of weather with it, and by the time it gets here in the east, it's going to wind up being drier. Watches and warnings tonight. We still have coastal flood warnings and coastal flood advisories from southern New England down to eastern Virginia. We're looking at Slash flood watch is still up in southern Arizona and for a few counties in southwest Colorado. Wind advisories in parts of Nevada, northwest Arizona, and into southern California. And we have winter storm warnings up in the Sierra Nevada mountains and a few winter weather advisories up in a few counties in Oregon and in Washington state in the Cascade. The severe weather-wise, there's just basically marginal risk over the next 3 days. I'll go ahead and point them out. Small areas in Arizona and in Southern California. This is where LA is actually under a marginal risk, and they even have a 2% tornado risk there, Joe, uh,
Wow.
for for tomorrow. That's unusual. And for the next day, another day of marginal risk and 2% tornado risk for Southern California, and the Arizona marginal risk moves into New Mexico. Day three, day three. There we go. In New Mexico and also in western Nebraska and into South Dakota, but everybody else, the eastern half of the country looking good. And I will point out that on the long range on day six, we already have an implied slight risk or 15% chance from northeast Texas, extreme northern Louisiana, northward into Missouri, Illinois, western Kentucky, western Tennessee, and northwestern Mississippi. Now, rainfall wise, this takes us to next Tuesday. And hang on, folks. If you see the circle of doom, that's because I'm still having internet hiccups, and unfortunately, I have not yet been able to resolve what the issue is. So I'm back. Sorry about that. Hang
Okay,
on.
I'm here. I'm here.
Okay, we're here, folks. I'm still having these problems, and
We,
this is gonna be one of those things that I'm just gonna have to wait for it to fix itself somehow. I have no idea what's going on. But that's the way life is, I guess. Anyway, we were talking about WPC and the rainfall forecast for the next 7 days, and we're seeing now. I don't know how much of this is left over from tonight. I would tend to think that probably not much of it. So let's just say that the bulk of this is probably, and this would be for later Sunday night into Monday with the next cold front, a half to 3/4. You can see some patchy areas of an inch and a half in upstate New York. Also, inch and a half plus amounts in southern Indiana, southern Illinois, back through Missouri into northern Mississippi and western Tennessee. So that's all part of that next weather system that's going to be moving to the east. You see the action in the west, where a significant amount of mountain rain in Southern California being forecast of several inches or more, and also in the Sierra Nevadas and up in the northwest corner of Washington state. And as I said, the area in California that is snow. Let me see if I can get the snow map up here on the digital forecast for that area. Pretty soon we'll be looking at snows in other places, but it's got to start someplace. And this is the snowfall forecast for the Sierra Nevadas. I see a 25. I see a bunch of 10s. So it looks like a foot or two for the mountains there, and also in some of the higher tops across Nevada and parts of Utah, and moving up further north into Idaho and Montana, seeing snowfall amounts in some places up to a foot or more, in some places up just a couple of inches or even less. So there's not a whole, once this whole thing usually when the atmosphere gets a headache like this, it takes a little while for it to calm down. You can see the upper air in the west is that very deep trough. That's a wrapped up cutoff that drops down the coast of California uh, during the day tomorrow and into Wednesday. So that's why they've got that severe weather alert that they have there with respect to the marginal risk. And of course, the East Coast cutoff is nowhere near as vigorous as the one in the West, and that gets kicked out to the East. So, but we do have another trough that's dropping down into Labrador and Eastern Atlantic Canada, Joe, and that is you can see the shortwave that's in upstate New York and New England on Wednesday that moves through, and that's the next that shot of cold air that's going to come for later Wednesday, and particularly for Wednesday night through probably a good chunk of Friday.
Well, like I said, it's like we're going to be into a long-term stretch of quiet weather, and also we'll be seeing milder temperatures. I think Thursday night we might have another night where it'll get rather cold. We may see again freeze or frost advisories. Although I'm not even sure now if the growing season. I'm sure the growing season has come to an end in many spots in the lower Hudson Valley, so they may get into the upcoming weekend a nice little warming trend. We may see temperatures into the lower 70s in many places when we get to Sunday. So, and this weekend looks like a very nice weekend. If you're planning to do any leaf peeping, maybe up north. So, and again, it's a stretch of dry weather in the aftermath of this sudden burst of wetness that we had here from yesterday into last night and on into, well, it continues today or into this evening. However light and misty it is, it's still a little bit of precipitation falling from our vaunted nor'easter.
Now we do have, it's kind of interesting the way the pattern is shaping up. Everything seems to be moving along from west to east, but we do have the models trying to drop a deep cutoff off the coast of southeastern New England around the 21st or 22nd. It's been showing up there on and off for the last 4 or 5 days. I haven't really paid a whole lot of a whole. I haven't really paid a whole lot of attention to it uh, because of what's been going on in the short range. But it's one of those things that you just have to watch how the models evolve with all of that. But then it moves along eventually, and we just have more troughs dropping into the east. But as soon as they drop in, they drop out, and of course we have to have the model run that every so often has to show a major hurricane, and you can see one at the end of the forecast period crossing Cuba with this an animal trough in the eastern part of the United States. Now, take a look at that, Joe, and you make sure you know it's not going to be there. Obviously, it's going to be totally different on the next run.
Well, you know that the folks at the Climate Prediction Center have now officially placed us in a La Nina pattern. They said
Right.
La Nina kicked in a few days ago officially. And of course, when we have a typical La Nina pattern, what do we see? We see a phase that allows for wind shear in regions of the Atlantic Basin where tropical weather develops. Uh, the weather potential for tropical systems increase for more storms. And in fact, I think there's somebody at the Climate Prediction Center, Matthew Rosencrans, lead hurricane seasonal forecaster with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, uh, suggests that more activity, double the amount in November, could occur when compared to a neutral, and especially when compared to Novembers with an El Nino. So, with that having been said, maybe it's not so crazy that we might see that setup that you just saw for the Florida Peninsula. But apparently, there are some forecasters that are suggesting that we may have activity continue right on into November in terms of tropical, maybe more activity than we normally would see. So
Well,
let's see.
normal storm for count in November is one. So double that would be two.
We'll get two.
Well, they got Lorenzo out of the way, so in case you haven't heard, and I'll quickly show you that to everybody in just a bit.
I'm
As
still
far as
shaking my head over. I'm still shaking my head over Karen.
that was the
I,
furthest north that they have ever made gave a name to a storm. Up at like
and you know,
four. at 45 degrees north latitude, over 20
and
degrees Celsius water. Come,
and
please.
and I've said this before. Maybe the overall abundance of tropical cyclone activity in recent years or in the last couple of decades has been due to the fact that the forecasters are now attaching, tropical characteristics or even names to storms that they would not have done in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, which is why in those decades we had, maybe 8 or 9 or 10
Right, there
named
were
storms.
lower counts.
And now it's like, especially in years like 2005, where they had I remember that one of the explanations on one of the technical discussions for a storm near Portugal was if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck. If it looks like a hurricane and, you know,
Yeah, I
excuse
remember
me,
that. Bless you.
excuse me. Yes,
Um,
thank you.
Joseph Carr, thank you for hitting the tip jar tonight on Super Chat. Most appreciated, as always. Okay, so here's what the surface looks like. You can see the system in the west, the 94 low there near Reno, and all the moisture driving down into Southern California. The blue shows up as snow, of course. Here in the east, our Delaware
Maps, Joe.
low. What's that?
Maps.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thanks for telling me. I'm so busy trying to monitor the internet in case it decides to drop out on us. It's already done that twice. All right, so there's your GFS here, the low in the west, dropping down, the big high coming into the east, the unnoticed cold front, the coastal storm getting the Delaware low winds up becoming the primary low, and it just all goes out to the east and goodbye. So, as you said, slow improvement. By the way, the weather was beautiful here in the deep south, and it's going to continue to be beautiful for the rest of the week. Nice cool high building down, so I'll have a northeast wind to deal with. Sometimes that brings in cloud cover here when we get into what's called the wedge, whenever you have a big high building like this down the Appalachians. And then, of course, that goes out. And here's your system for Sunday, which actually, this is the area that the SPC is talking about for severe weather on Saturday across Arkansas and Missouri, and then maybe even extending into Kentucky and Ohio. And then that swings to the east. But the rain stays out. This is at 8 o'clock Sunday evening. It's still dry, except for eastern Pennsylvania. So um, the day side on Sunday should be fine. Saturday certainly should be fine as temperatures move up. Front goes by. We get then some cooler air coming down, and of course, I mentioned that deep trough off the that drops off to southeastern New England. So we'll have to keep our eyes on that. Maybe it winds up there. Maybe it winds up being further west. But overall, things are moving along, which is a good thing. And we seem to be getting fronts that are a little more active and with a little bit more in the way of moisture. So that is a good thing because it's been too dry for too long. And of course, the rains from the last 2 days have made up for some of that. There's Tropical Storm Lorenzo. It's Joe. It's not even to 50 degrees, 45 degrees west. It's already moving northwestward. This is going to be another one that recurves way out. I mean, look at this. It doesn't even make it to 45 west, and then it's already moving northeast and is winds up south of the Azores and to the east of the Canary Islands. So this just gets another name out of the way, and that will be that. And we'll see. Still plenty of time through the month to probably get another tropical system before we get into that grand month of November, which is always an interesting month with respect to storms. Novembers can be very, very volatile.
I would agree. I would absolutely agree on that.
Yeah.
And, we pick up a couple of. It would be kind of funny though if we had a couple of tropical cyclones form in November, and one of them evolved into something significant that had an effect on the weather here in the United States. I remember many many years ago. I think it was in the 1980s, maybe it was the early 80s, that we had a hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico in November. It was by the name of Gene, and Gene, as it moved northward, ran into a batch of colder air, and actually the moisture translated into a snowstorm for places like in Western North Carolina and the Virginias or whatever. It it can happen. So
Oh yeah.
we'll see if
Well, it happened. It happened with Sandy in West Virginia.
you're true. That's absolutely true. That's right. And then right after Sandy, we had snow. About a week after Sandy, we had snow here in the New York metropolitan area from a completely different system, but still, crazy weather. Will we
Yep.
see crazy weather in November? We'll see.
Gary Crosby just hits the tip jar, Joe. I don't think that's Gary Crosby, the comedian, but it's Gary
Or,
Crosby who's on the chat board from time to time. Thank you so much. Thank you,
or
Gary,
was
for
it
hitting super chat.
or was it Gary Crosby who wrote the rather nasty biography about his father Bing?
Oh, was the son's name Gary?
Oh yeah, and he wrote all kinds of after Bing died in 1977. Gary Crosby was talking about how it's interesting. Bing Crosby was an interesting guy. He had two families. He had a set of sons with his first wife, and then he married a much younger woman, and they had a family with much younger children, obviously. But Gary Crosby said that the older sons that Bing Crosby used to come home and used to use the belt on them until,
God.
until it or the brush, the hairbrush. Uh, uh, you know, Interesting. I suspect that Gary Crosby had a gripe with his father. Maybe he was kept out of the will or whatever. But
Yeah, David
I get
Scott is
Gary.
right. I was thinking of Norm Crosby. You're right.
Norm
It's
Crosby. That's
Norm
right.
Crosby. He
Right.
was an old Borscht Belt performer
I'm
up in
not
the
assuming that
Catskills.
Gary Crosby. I'm not assuming that Gary Crosby is the same Gary Crosby who was related to Bing. But thank you anyway for the
Oh,
hitting the
absolutely.
tip of
Thank
the
you for the
line.
tip jar hit. Sure. It's not. But anyway, just kind of stirred my head just a little bit. All right. We are going to try to get ourselves back into some sense of normalcy after being on, I don't know how many days in a row it was, plus doing double shows yesterday. So we're going to take the next 2 days off. So the next time you will see us, folks, here will be Thursday. Okay.
And
And be
and Thursday will be auspicious for some of our folks on the chat board because Thursday is the day when the Climate Prediction Center is going to issue its winter
It's going
forecast.
to
So,
issue its above normal temperature forecast for the east and below normal temperature for a sliver in the northern plains. I don't know why everybody gets, this has always been mind boggling to me. I mean, who cares what, you know, my general rule is whatever they're going for is the majority. I will take the other side of the trade. And it worked great for me last year. Everybody was screaming La Nina, La Nina, La Nina. It was going to be a warm winter. It turned out to be one of the coldest winters in the deep south, certainly, and it was mostly colder than normal everywhere else in the eastern part of the United States. So they missed that. So if everybody's going for above normal and less snowfall, that's fine. I'll take the other side of that. And
well,
actually, at
like
the end of the day, what matters is what falls out of my cabin front door. So as long as I get some, I'm happy.
we'll see. We'll see what the folks at CPC says on Thursday, and that will be the day when we come back. We'll be back here at 7:35 on Thursday, the 16th of October.
All right, so we'll see everybody then, and we'll get back to normal. We'll get Briller Jeopardy going back again. Thank you, Scott, for sending me that video of Wildwood with the tidal flooding, and we'll see everybody on Thursday. So have a good couple of days.
Night, folks.